Early childhood, 3 to 8 years old.
11 interesting facts about early childhood education. Number 1, numbers are language too. Number 2, kids feel emotional differently. Number 3, preschool count. Number 4, attachment styles from early on. Number 5, language isn't learned. Number 6, baby talk is actually important. Number 7, babies and young kids understand prosody. Number 8, kids don't come with theory of mind. Number 9, the critical period is real. And number 10, play is an essential part of early childhood education. And last one is kids learn from another kids.
Early childhood comprises a number of life stages marked by developmental milestones. Here we define early childhood as the period from birth to age 8, although we also recognize the importance of quality prenatal care and early childhood outcomes. R is a definition shared by many leading nation and international organizations. We end with age 8 because it reflects an important developmental milestone. Age 8 corresponds to third grade, a critical year for mastery of the reading skill, upon which further learning will build and reliable prediction of future education success. Although age 0 to 8 represent a clear developmental continuum, there are good reasons why funders and programs specialize in one stage. The needs of children and their families evolves, and different organizations are positioned to play different roles in different stage. For example, infant and their parents may be more easily reached throughout the health system, while the prospect of older children may be more easily influenced throughout their elementary school. A daily investment across of all stages will be sequenced and coordinated so that the childhood benefit as infant from one program moves seamlessly to environment that we continue to support.
During this stage of development, a toddler learns to socialize. The child also learns the language, autonomy, and the ability to adapt to the environment. The child's thinking pattern also changes, making him able to perceive size, space, distance, and volume. A child who enjoys the freedom to choose or exercise autonomy may grow with confidence and a sense of self-reliance. The self-concept and cognitive development. Self-concept. The total picture of our abilities and traits. It is a cognitive construction, a system of descriptive and evaluative representations about the self that determine how we feel about ourselves and guide our actions. It begins to come into focus in toddlerhood as children develop self-awareness, self-definition. 5 to 7 shift changes in self-definition, reflecting self-concept development. The way they describe themselves. 3 stages of in development of self-definition. First, single representation. At age 4, in which children describe themselves in terms of individual, unconnected characteristics and in all or nothing terms. Second, representational mappings. About age 5 to 6, in which a child makes logical connections between aspects of the self but still sees these characteristics in all or nothing terms. Third, representational system. Takes place in middle childhood. Children begin to integrate specific features of the self into a general multidimensional concept. Self-esteem. Self-evaluative part of self-concept. Developmental changes in self-esteem. Children's positive or negative self-perceptions at age 5 tended to predict their self-perceptions and socio-emotional functioning at age 8. Although there are differences in self-esteem, most young children, while they overestimate their abilities, Their self-esteem isn't based on reality. Self-esteem is the result of feedback received from other people, and adults tend to give positive and uncritical feedback. Contingent self-esteem, the helpless pattern. When self-esteem is high, a child is generally motivated to achieve. However, if self-esteem is contingent on success, children may view failure or criticism as an indictment of their worth and may feel helpless to do better. Helpless children feel ashamed and give up. They assume they will fail and so do not bother to try. Understanding and regulating emotions. Understanding conflicting emotions. Many young children do not understand that they can experience contrary emotional reactions at the same time. Individual differences in understanding conflicting emotions are evident by age 3. Understanding emotions directed toward the self. Emotions directed toward the self, such as guilt, shame, and pride, typically develop by the end of the 3rd year, after children gain self-awareness and accept the standards of behavior their parents have set. Gender. Gender identity. Awareness of one's femaleness or maleness and all it implies in one's society of origin and an important aspect of the developing self-concept. Gender differences. Psychological or behavioral differences between females and males. Perspective on gender development. Gender roles, behaviors, interests, attitudes, skills, and personality traits that a culture considers appropriate for males and females. Gender typing, socialization process whereby children at an early age learn appropriate gender roles. Gender stereotypes, preconceived generalizations about male or female role behavior. 5 perspective on gender development. Theories, biological approach. Evolutionary approach by Charles Darwin. Psychoanalytic approach by Sigmund Freud. Cognitive approach by Lawrence Kohlberg. Gender schema theory by Sandra Bem, Carol Lim, Martin and Charles F. Halverson. Social learning approach by Albert Ventura. Play, the business of early childhood. Play contributes to all domains of development. Through play, children stimulate the senses, exercise their muscles, coordinate size with movement, pain, mastery over their bodies, make decisions, and acquire new skills. Cognitive levels of play. Functional play, constructive play, dramatic play, and formal games with rules. The social dimensions of play. Parents' categories of social and non-social play. Categories: unoccupied behavior, onlooker behavior, solitary independent play, associative play, and cooperative or organized supplementary play. How culture influence play. Parenting, a complex challenge with small people who have independent mind and wills who still have a lot to learn about what kinds of behavior work well in society. Forms of discipline. Discipline, methods of molding children's character and of teaching them to exercise self-control and engage in acceptable behavior. Reinforcement and punishment. External reinforcement may be tangible or intangible. Internal reinforcement, a sense of pleasure or accomplishment. Corporal punishment, the use of physical force with the intention of causing a child to experience pain, but not injury, for the purpose of correction or control of the child behaviors. Inductive technique, disciplinary techniques designed to induce desirable behavior by appealing to a child's sense of reason and fairness. Power assertion, disciplinary strategy designed to discourage undesirable behavior through physical or verbal reinforcement of parental control. Withdrawal of love, disciplinary strategy that involves ignoring, isolating, or showing dislike for a child. Parenting styles. Authoritarian parenting. Parenting style emphasizing control and obedience. Permissive parenting. Parenting style emphasizing self-expression and self-regulation. Authoritative parenting. Parenting style blending respect for a child's individuality with an effort to instill social values. Special behavioral concerns. Altruism. Behavior intended to help others out of inner concern and without expectation of external reward. May involve self-denial or self-sacrifice. Prosocial behavior. Any voluntary behavior intended to help others. Aggression or mental aggression. Used as an instrument to reach a goal, the most common type of aggression in early childhood. Instrumental aggression. Aggressive behavior used as a means of achieving a goal. Over direct aggression. Aggression that is openly directed at its target. Relational aggression. Aggression aimed at damaging or interfering with another person's relationship, reputation, or psychological well-being. Relationships with other children. Sibling relationship. Despite the frequency of conflict, sibling rivalry is not the main pattern between brothers and sisters early in life. Affection, interest, companionship, and influence are also prevalent in sibling relationship. The only child. They tend to be more motivated to achieve and to have slightly higher self-esteem, and they do not differ in emotional adjustment, sociability, or popularity. Playmates and friends. Friendships develop as people develop. Through friendships and interactions with casual playmates, young children learn how to get along with others. They learn how to solve problems in relationships and how to put themselves in another person's place, and they see models of various kinds of behavior. Cognitive development, preoperational thought. The symbolic function. Being able to think about something in the absence of sensory motor cues. Piaget's term for ability to use mental representations, such as words, numbers, or images, to which a child has attached meaning. Having symbols for things help children remember and think about them without having them physically present. Variety of symbolic functions. Deferred imitation. Children imitate an action at some point after having observed it. Becomes more robust after 18 months. Requires a child to have kept a mental representation of an observed action. A child must pull a representation out of memory in order to repeat it. Pretend play. Also called fantasy play, dramatic play, or imaginary play. Children use an object to represent something else. Language is a system of symbols. Advances of preoperational thought. Understanding of objects in space. Children begin to understand the symbols that describe physical spaces, although this process is slow. Until at least age of 3, most children reliably grasp the relationships between pictures, maps, or scale models and the objects or spaces they represent. Older preschoolers can use simple maps and they can transfer spatial understandings gained from working with the models to maps and vice versa. Understanding of causality. Piaget maintained that preoperational children cannot yet reason logically about cause and effect. Instead, he said, they reason by transduction. Transduction. Piaget's term for a preoperational child tendency to mentally link particular phenomena, whether or not there is logically a causal relationship. Understanding of identities and categorization. The concept that people and many things are basically the same even if they change in outward form, size, or appearance. Categorization or classification requires a child to identify similarities and differences. Animism, tendency to attribute life to objects that are not alive. In general, it appears that children attribute animism to items that share characteristics with living things, things that move, make sounds, or have lifelike features such as eyes. Understanding of number 9 to 11 months. Other research has found that ordinality, the concept of comparing quantities more or less, bigger or smaller, seems to begin at this rate. At the age of 4, most children have words for comparing quantities. Not until age 3.5 or older do most children consistently apply cardinality principle in counting. At age of 5, 1 most to 10, children can count 20 or more and know the relative sizes by counting on their fingers or by using other objects. Elementary school age. Most children have developed basic number sense. This basic level of number skills includes counting, number knowledge, ordinality, number transformation, simple addition and subtraction, estimation, and recognition of numbers. Immature aspects of pre-operational thought. Centration. In Piaget's theory, the tendency of pre-operational children to focus on one aspect of a situation and neglect others. According to Piaget, preschoolers come to illogical conclusions because they cannot decenter. Decenter. In Piaget's terminology, it is to think simultaneously about several aspects of a situation. Centration can limit young children's thinking about both social and physical relationships. Egocentrism. It is a form of centration. Piaget's term for inability to consider another person's point of view, a characteristic of young children's thought. Piaget's 3 mountain task. A pre-operational child is unable to describe the mountains from the doll's point of view, an indication of egocentrism according to Piaget's. Conservation. Another classic example of centration. Piaget's term for awareness that two objects that are equal according to a certain measure remain equal in the face of perceptual alteration, so as long as nothing has been added to or taken away from either object. Pre-operational children's responses are influenced by two immature aspects of thought, centration and irreversibility. Centration involves focusing on one's dimension while ignoring the other. Irreversibility. Piaget's term for a pre-operational child's failure to understand that an operation can go in two or more directions. Do young children have theories of mind? Theory of mind. It is awareness and understanding of mental processes. Having a theory of mind allows us to understand and predict the behavior of others and makes the social world understandable. Knowledge about thinking and mental states. Between ages 3 and 5, children come to understand that thinking goes on inside the mind, that it can deal with either real or imaginary things, that someone can thinking of one thing while doing or looking at something else, that a person whose eyes and ears are covered can think about objects, that someone who looks pensive is probably thinking, and that thinking is different from seeking, talking, touching, and knowing. False beliefs and deception. The understanding that people can hold false beliefs flows from the realization that people hold mental representations of reality, which can something be wrong. Deception is an effort to plant false belief in someone else's mind. Some studies have found that children become capable of deception as early as age of 2 or 3, others at 4 or 5. The difference may have to do with the means of deception children are expected to use. Distinguishing between appearance and reality. According to Piaget, not only about age 5 or 6 do children begin to understand the distinction between what seems to be and what is. Some studies have found this ability beginning to emerge before age 4, distinguishing between fantasy and reality. Magical thinking, a way to explain events that do not seem to have obvious realistic explanations, usually because children lack knowledge about them, or simply to indulge in the pleasure of pretending as with a belief in imaginary companions. Influence on individual difference in theory of mind development. Infant social attention has been closely linked to theory of mind development. Social competence and language development also contribute to an understanding of thoughts and emotions. Children whose teachers and peers rate them high on social skills are better able to recognize false beliefs and also tend to have strong language skills. The kind of talk a young child hears at home may affect the child's understanding of mental states. Empathy usually arises earlier in children whose families talk a lot about feelings and causality. Families that encourage pretend play stimulate the development of theory of mind skills. Bilingual children who speak and hear more than one language at home do somewhat better than children with only one language on certain theory of mind tasks. Brain development is also necessary for theory of mind. An incomplete or ineffective theory of mind may be a sign of cognitive or development impairment. Memory development, basic processes and capacities. Memory is described as filing system that has 3 steps or process. Encoding, process by which information is prepared for long-term storage and later retrieval. Storage, retention of information in memory for future use. 3 types of storage: sensory memory, working memory, executive function, long-term memory, and lastly, central is executive. In Baddeley's model element of working memory that controls the processing information, orders information encoded for transfer to long-term memory. Recognition and recall are types of retrieval. Recall. It is the ability to reproduce material or knowledge from memory. Recognition. Ability to identify a previously encountered stimulus. 3 types of childhood memory. Generic memory. Memory that produces scripts of familiar routines to guide behavior. Second, episodic memory. Long-term memory, specific experiences or events linked to time and place. Autobiographical memory. Memory of specific events in one's life. Factors that influence on memory retention. Uniqueness of the event. When events are rare or unusual as well as those events with emotional impact, children seems to remember them better. Children's active participation, preschoolers tend to remember things they did better than things they merely saw. Self-awareness. In one experiment, self-awareness at age 2 was predictive of the ability to retell stories more accurately at age 3. Social interaction model that proposes children construct autobiographical memories through conversation with adults about shared events. Intelligence, psychometric and Vygotskian approaches. Traditional psychometric measures. Stanford, Binet intelligence scales, individual intelligence tests for ages 2 and up to measure fluid reasoning, knowledge, quantitative reasoning, visual spatial processing, and working memory. Wechsler Preschool and Primary Scale of Intelligence, revised. Individual intelligence tests children ages 2.5 to 7 that yields verbal and performance scores as well as a combined score. Zone of Proximal Development or ZPD. Vygotsky's term for the difference between what a child can do alone and what the child can do with help. The ZPD can be assessed by dynamic test. Dynamic test. Emphasize potential rather than present achievement, and strive to measure learning processes directly rather than through the products of past learning. Scaffolding. Temporary support to help a child master a task. Language development. Vocabulary. Fast mapping. Process which a child absorbs the meaning of a new word after hearing it once or twice in conversation. Grammar and syntax. Grammar. When psychologists speak of grammar, they are referring to the deep underlying structure of a language that enables us to both produce and understand utterances. Syntax is a related concept and involves the rules of putting together sentences in a particular language. Pragmatics and social speech. Pragmatics. The social knowledge needed to use language for communicative purposes. Social speech. Speech intended to be understood by a listener. Private speech. Talking aloud to oneself with no intent to communicate with others. Delayed language development. Children who speak late do not necessarily lack linguistic input at home. Hearing problems. Head and facial abnormalities may be associated with speech and language delays. Premature birth, family history, socioeconomic factors, and other developmental delays. Preparation for literacy. Emergent literacy. Preschoolers develop of skills, knowledge, and attitudes that underlie reading and writing. Pre-reading skills can be divided into two types. Media and cognition. Preschool. Age children comprehend the symbolic nature of television and can readily imitate behaviors they see. By the age of 3, children are active media users, able to pay greater attention to dialogue and narrative. Program content is an important mediator. Using media responsibly. Limit screen time to the least amount possible. Set guidelines for appropriate viewing for all media, including TV, videos, DVD, movies, and games. Protect children from inappropriate media. Require that children ask before turning on media. Remote TVs, video game systems, and computer from bedroom. Watch programs and movies together and discuss what you are watching. Use media in a positive way to spark imagination and creativity. Limit the number of products you purchase for your child that are linked to the TV programs.
The early childhood years are an important part of child's life. They are the foundation on which the rest of one's life will be built. So it is imperative that parents take good care of their children during the early years to create the right environment for them to grow up. This is why schools around the world have introduced early childhood education programs that allow every child to participate in activities that will help them effectively develop into a healthy and productive adult. By 3 years old, a child doubles her height and quadruples her weight. She has mastered setting, walking, and toilet training using a spoon, scribbling, and sufficient hand-eye coordination per play. She could be able to speak and understand between 300 and 1,000 words. 3 to 5 years old, the preschool years. A child is growing rapidly and beginning to develop gross and fine motor skills. Physical growth slows and body proportion and motor skills become more refined. By 5, her vocabulary will have grown to about 1,500 words and she should be speaking in sentences of 5 to 7 words. These early physical childhood skills are accompanied by social and emotional development where your children will look to her parents and caregivers as well as the environment around here for approval and response.
Early childhood development. The Aflutot curriculum is for young children who have not yet entered primary school, usually between 3 to 6 years old. It provides an early childhood education program that lays the foundation for social and financial literacy. The program builds on the evidence in early childhood education that such early investment provides children with advantages that are amplified and reinforced over time. Early childhood is the most critical time for positive intervention. Children's development during this stage is strongly affected by their environment, and that effect continues to exert a strong influence on the rest of their lives. It is most important that education and life skill programs such as Aflotot also begin at this early stage.